Okay, so I think we're going to start this morning. Everyone, welcome to the Dunera project, to our In Conversation. Our hosts, we have Lisa Goldberg from Monday Morning Cooking Club, myself, Melissa Donport from Mia Cucina Food Tours, and the very entrepreneurial Michael Shafran from Brooklyn Bagels. For those of you that are new to the Dunera project, it actually came out of isolation, where we were looking for an online website where people could come to source information, whether it be talks and lectures or classes or workshops, listening to music or in the arts, anything to do with religion, in food, in music. It's a huge selection of wonderful choices. You can go on demand and see what's new in Netflix. You can see wonderful podcasts. And we're basically a whole group of volunteers. And so Lisa and I head the food channel. And so welcome this morning. We quite often are asked, where does the word Dunera come from? The Dunera was a ship that came out of Europe, out of Germany and Austria in the 1940s with a lot of Jews fleeing the war. On that ship were a group of boys who became very close and connected and stayed together their whole lives. And they were known as the Dunera boys. And in society in Australia, they were scientists and architects, and they really laid a very strong foundation for the Jewish community in the 30s.
Nice. Thanks, Mel. So don't forget to go to the Dunera website after this and check out all the amazing things that are on. It's really fantastic. You could spend an hour just trawling through the websites that are on offer. So let me introduce formally our very special guest. I have known Michael for probably 10 years, give or take.
At least.
And we met through a journalist friend we had in common, and I followed him from arriving as a journalist, I guess, and then creating this industry that he's created from literally nothing. And it's amazing that he's done it. And I've sort of watched it happen from the sidelines. So Michael was born and raised in New York, if that wasn't obvious already. And he's a leading food and travel journalist and blogger. And he began the search, I think over a decade ago, for a New York bagel in Sydney. He has a global view on food trends and frequently travels to and reports from international destinations, with particular expertise on Australian, Southeast Asian, Chinese, American, and of course, Jewish cuisine. His work has been featured in many of Australia's top food, travel, and lifestyle publications. But back to the New York bagel. When he moved to Sydney, he couldn't find anything that came close and decided to make his own. He is now CEO and dough raiser of Brooklyn Bagels and a self-described business maverick and writer with a brain for new food trends. He very, very cleverly devised the concept, food brand, and systems for this artisan bagel bakery, growing it from a creative pop-up, bringing real New York bagels to Australia for the first time, and evolving it into a wholesale and retail bakery. It's actually an amazing story. I just want to show a short video which gives you an overview of Michael and what he's been doing the last few years. So just bear with me for 1 second while I do this. Okay. Is that working?
What I like about the process of making the bagels the traditional way, I feel like I'm preserving a bit of my own heritage, a sort of time-worn tradition that if people like me don't do, will probably start to disappear, and people will start to forget how to make it the traditional way. I wanted to reproduce a traditional artisan bagel that's done in that classic New York style. And what that means is it's hand rolled rather than done through a machine, which is the way most bagels are done. It's boiled, which I think a bagel has to be boiled, and it's using the best ingredients we can find. food's a way of giving to people. I mean, I guess at heart, I'm a people pleaser, and it's a way for me to please the people around me. Kind of wow them as well. I mean, I guess there's a little bit of ego in that as well, but really it's more about, I want to make people happy, and food's a way that I know I can do that. Before Brooklyn Bagels, well, even now, I mean, I guess I still consider myself a food journalist. I mean, I've been writing about food for probably about the past 13 years. And I've done a lot of eating being a food writer, but I've always actually wanted to spend more time in the kitchen. So I guess that was part of the reason why I wanted to do Brooklyn Boy, was that it gave me a chance to get my hands dirty. Even though I've been a journalist for a long time, I felt quite fidgety in a chair. And I always want to go up and get out. I love the idea of actually getting in a kitchen, working with that dough, being really physical with it. It makes you a lot more present, and it's pretty stressful still, but something about that physical pressure and stress I actually find more relaxing than the mental stress of being stuck in a chair. My advice for someone that wants to start up their own business is expect to be fearful. Someone gave me a really good example. When you push yourself in these kinds of areas, there's a rubber band effect where you stretch out the rubber band and you get to that point where the tension gets really high, and your natural reaction is just to let go, is to release that pressure, which, for most people that means, say it's all too hard. I'm going to go back to have a stable job in an office where I can relax and enjoy myself. As opposed to, I think if you're going to be an entrepreneur, when you have that tension, it's just relieving that tension and let it slowly over time just ease up, and just, be patient in the fact that over time that you'll get to a point where things are going to work, that what you don't know, you will know, that the fear that you have, it won't go away, but it'll be less so, because you'll know more next week than you know this week. It's hard giving out your bread and butter, which is what's been paying my rent for the past 12 years for something that's a labor of love. But really, that's the whole point. And as scary as it is, this is the place I've wanted to be all this time.
Fabulous. Such a lovely insight into seeing you. And it is hard work, absolutely hard work.
So actually, that was in the early days. I look at that guy and I'm like, you have no idea what you're in for.
Michael, what interests us is people who are passionate in food, is where that stemmed from. Can you tell us a little bit about your family life, your childhood, and your heritage? Where are your family, your parents, your grandparents from?
So, I guess, both my families come from Eastern Europe, so they're all Ashkenazi Jews, which means they're Eastern European Jews. Half the family came from Poland, and the other half came from Romania. So my dad's side was from Poland, my mother's side from Romania. A little bit of Russian sneaks in every now and again. And both, pretty much all of our either grandparents or their parents, they came in through Ellis Island in New York. So they all came back classic way, saw the Statue of Liberty, moved to the Lower East Side with everybody else, and then made that pilgrimage to Brooklyn, like the vast majority of the Jewish community that came to New York. It's funny now because I have Polish Jewish heritage, and that's actually that's how all the bagels came to New York. It came through all the Polish Jewish bakers in Poland, and that was one of the few jobs they were actually allowed to do, and they were the bagel makers, and that's where all bagels come from. They come from Poland, primarily Krakow, and then later they moved to Warsaw. And bagels are actually known as a sign of poverty, because when, like, during the Warsaw Ghetto, there's almost nothing else for them to do but actually be bagel makers or be out of business. So there's a long heritage from Poland, and that's why London, Montreal, and New York are really the bagel capitals of the world, just because of that Polish Jewish immigration. Where the passion for food comes from, lots of places. I think Jewish culture is passionate about food anyway, and I think it got more intensified when I think I was about 11 years old. My mother decided she wanted to go back to university and study interior design at the Fashion Institute of Technology in New York. And she left me with my father and my brother. And my father is was a brilliant man. And he knew about everything except that he was incompetent in the kitchen. So we then ate out for about 2 months nonstop while my mother went back to university. And then on the rare, moment when she was actually home, I just started, paying attention, being in the kitchen with her and having her show me how to do things. Like my father couldn't even cook pasta. So I think when I started learning from my mother, I think it was the first time in my life I discovered this is something that actually I was better at than my father, which I think when you're 11 years old, it's kind of a big accomplishment, right? So I think that started this love of food and spending time in the kitchen. And that, even in university, I was like one of my only friends that could cook. And I used to have my fraternity brothers come to my place to make them stir fries and other things. And so I was always a bit of a foodie.
So tell me your memories when you were young. Which of your grandmothers, the Polish, who was the better cook? What were your early memories of food then?
My father's mother was definitely the best cook. And we would always go to her house and she would make us, chicken soup, which actually instead of matzo balls, it had like these little, pasta squares in them. And roast chicken. We didn't even know her name. We just called her Grandma Chicken. I didn't know her name, I think, for the first 15 years of our lives. Yeah, she lived in Brooklyn, and would speak Yiddish with my father. And then my father's sister Marilyn, she kind of, when my grandmother got too old, she would pick up the helm. And then literally I would know, any Friday night if I wanted to, I could even after university, I could get on the train, take the M train out to Brooklyn, go to her house any Friday night. She'd be cooking Shabbos dinner. And I knew I could just show up there anytime I wanted to have, some time with family and a home cooked dinner. And she would make us kreplach soup. And there's always fresh challah bread. My mother would always yell at me for eating too much challah bread before dinner and spoiling my appetite. And gefilte fish and, just classic Jewish, Friday night dinners.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And tell me the idea of growing up in Brooklyn as a young boy. In your generation, did you go out and eat a lot?
We did. I was born in Brooklyn, and both my parents, my father was born and raised in Williamsburg, and my mother, pretty much, grew up in Flatbush. Now we were in Brooklyn until I was 4. And then we moved to Staten Island, and then eventually we moved to the Jersey burbs. But because all the family was in Brooklyn, we would just, we every couple of weeks we would always drive and spend time with the family in Brooklyn. So Brooklyn to me also means that that's where we go for to see the family for legitimate, Jewish food. So yeah, we ate a lot of food. Even when we moved to New Jersey, we always had a good kosher deli nearby. And then we bring back, home cold cuts and, pastrami and roast beef. Tongue was a big thing as well. There were things I hated, like pickled herring, whitefish, lots of stuff. And every Sunday was, my father would go to the bagel shop, bring the bagels home, and we would just have bagels. It's just a normal thing. Or when I lived in Manhattan, I would go downtown to Essa Bagel on 20th and 1st. I get bagels hot out of the oven because that's what I wanted. I wait. Basically, you go there, you'd be like, okay, which one is hot? I don't care what flavor it is. I want the one that's hot. That's just come out like 5 minutes ago. You get that, some Tropicana orange juice and the New York Times, and that's Sunday. So that's why when I came to Australia, I probably didn't care about anything for the first year. I just wanted Australian culture, Australian food, or but after a year, I was just kind of like, well, I kind of want a taste of home. I want my Sunday bagels, and so I started looking for bagels, and so I was like, okay, so Bondi is the Jewish area. I'll try a Jewish bakery. So I went to one. I ordered I got some bagels, and I remember biting into the first one. And it just made me angry. I was like, this is not a bagel. This is a bread roll. This is a roll with a hole in it. And I was just like, oh my God, this is terrible. Let me try to find out where the good bagels are. And so, I would ask people, they're like, no, go to this bakery. No, the real bagels are here. And then when I ran out of all the places in Sydney, people were going like, oh, no, the real bagels, they're in Melbourne. Go to Melbourne. So I did. I went down to Melbourne. I tried all the bagel places there. Still like frustrated. And then, someone said, oh, no, actually the real bagels, the best bagel place is actually in Perth. And I was pretty sure it wasn't going to be in Perth. I had to go to Perth to figure that out. I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to make my own bagels at home. I'm going to work. I'm sure I can do a better job than the guys that are doing it here. And I was a food writer at the time. So my job was actually researching recipes and actually fixing chefs' recipes, because actually chefs are notoriously bad at writing recipes. This is when I was at Delicious Magazine as their chief sub-editor. So that's what I did. I just started researching. I think I reached about 50 recipes of bagels, and then just tried to figure out, what were the good commonalities, what were the different levers, and I just started playing around at home, and just trying different things for, I must have done that for a year before I even tried to make anybody else a bagel.
So I remember when you put that on social media, and I answered you with my opinion on the best bagel, and I remember you saying, tell me someone where to find a good bagel. And I'm from Melbourne originally. And I remember when I was in my early 20s, we used to go out on a Saturday night, and on the way home at 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., we would stop at Blick's, of course, which was the biggest and probably only bagel store in Australia at the time. And we used to think their bagels were amazing because that's what we grew up on. And then I moved to Sydney, and of course, replaced with Wellington bagels. And there was always that thing, which is better, Sydney or Melbourne? And then you come into the picture, and you introduce us to a whole new genre of bagel, because it's completely different. You're right.
Totally different.
The bread roll with a hole in it and the sort of bagel you do are completely different things. But can we just go back to your, your training? I'd love to sort of chart your growth from, when you decided to be a food writer to, the bagel guy. So talk through your work experience and what you did, from, I think, leaving college till coming to Sydney. Like, what were your favorite jobs? What really guided you along the way?
Well, it's funny. I was actually a sports and fitness writer, I basically, my passion on the side was food, because I was spending a lot of time training, and all my work was about sports. But then, of course, it makes you quite hungry, so that leaves a lot of room for food. I remember at one point I was an editor of an inline skating magazine in Boulder, Colorado, and I was just like, I have this passion for food, but I really would like to learn how to cook properly. So I signed myself up there's a new cooking school that opened up called the Cooking School of the Rockies in near between Boulder and Denver, Colorado, and I was living in Boulder at the time. So I did. I spent all my nights actually training at this formal cooking school at night, just to learn to be kind of chef-like. And I just started applying that to doing dinner parties and my own things at home. And I moved back to New York after that, and just really I just had this passion for food. But I worked as a journalist for a long time, and not long before I decided to come to Australia in 2001, I think probably in 2000, I decided, I was like, I really want to write about food. I don't want to just, I really have this passion for it. And so I started chasing down work in New York. And I remember I got my first gig with Time Out in New York. I was living in Hoboken, New Jersey at the time, right across the river from Manhattan. And they gave me my first assignment. It took me about 9 months of chasing them down politely for 9 months. And I expected just a little small story. And they came back and they gave me I think like a 7-page feature to write about Hoboken for Time Out in New York, all about all the secret places in Hoboken, which has a lot of heritage. That's both, there's actually a lot of Italian American and Latino and other foods there. So that's where Frank Sinatra is from. So I get to write about all these like, small Italian coal oven bakeries and sandwich shops and fresh mozzarella places and all that. So that really kicked off my food writing career. And then I came to Australia about a year later, and no one would hire me because I never worked for a food magazine, even though I had some freelance work. So I made my way through some men's magazines, because I'd also been writing sports and fitness for some men's magazines in the US. So my first job was with Ralph magazine, And then I started freelancing for like Dolly, and I made my way through what then was ACP. And then I got hired at Qantas magazine, which kind of got me into the food and travel space. And then Gourmet Traveler Wine gave me some work. And so then at least I started, writing about wine and being in the same office as Gourmet Traveler. And then eventually they started giving me some free, that was freelance work as an editor. And then eventually Delicious magazine came through, and I applied for their chief sub-editor job. And I didn't get it. It came down to me and one other candidate, and I didn't get it. And then 3 months later, they called me and they said, actually, our chief sub-editor is now pregnant and she's going to go on maternity leave. So can we actually ask you back, and can you become our chief sub-editor? And I was like, yes, because I just wanted a full-time food writing job. And that was, and so that's really what got me into the food journalism space as a full-time editor. And then I just did things on the side. I started baking bagels on the side. I eventually got spent time going to TAFE, doing commercial cookery to, again, just, sort of upping my skills. I started doing, when the bagel thing started happening, I started doing stages at different places. So I did a stage at Bentley restaurant when they were still in Surrey Hills. I went to Lux Bakery back in the days when they were still in Kensington and still more of an artisan bakery. And so I just started learning, and I started learning how much I didn't know, which was a lot. I mean, even as a food writer, you think you know a lot, but the minute you get yourself in a commercial kitchen and you start working on those commercial, scales on commercial equipment, it's a whole other ball game. So it really was a passion thing that just happened organically over a very, very, very long period of time. I mean, the bagels, I started making the bagels I think in 2002. So you're really talking about, it's about 18 years ago. I first started making them just at home, just for myself. And I really didn't launch it until a couple of years later, I did a party at my house, and I just invited my friends over, and I said, I'm going to make you guys real New York bagels. So I invited everybody over to my terrace in Paddington, had 50 friends over at night. I got my assistant food editor, and then her then boyfriend, who at the time was a photographer named Luke Burgess, who later on turned out to wound up being the best chef in Tasmania. Yeah. And we all just made bagels for my friends. And they were just like, oh my God, this is amazing. I've never had a bagel like this. So that's really where the bagel thing kicked off, even before. And I literally, it was a decade before I even started to do that for the public.
Somebody asks, was there a secret recipe for the bagels that started it off that you were taught by someone, or did you develop it all yourself?
Originally, I just researched. I mean, again, I grew up on bagels. I knew what I wanted. So that's actually a big thing, because I mean, even now I have a recipe. I can hire you the best sourdough bakers in Australia, give them the recipe, let them make the bagel, and it's all wrong. It's funny. They can take the exact same measurements and doesn't work the same way. You have to kind of know what you're trying to achieve, because you have to fine tune it. So I just basically took all these recipes and I'm like, okay, this is the percentage of flour to water they're using. This is what this book says. This is what they're, this is, even the rolling in the beginning, I wasn't even sure the right way to roll the bagel. I mean, even now you can get online and see all these people making bagels, and they take the ball of dough and they poke their finger through it. Now I know better. Now that's the most ridiculous thing you could ever do to a bagel. It's not made that way. You roll it around your hand. And it was all trial and error. I mean, again, I tried to poke the hole technique. I tried the roll around the hand technique, and it became really apparent really quickly that around the hand was harder to do, but it was a much, much better result. And they started looking like the bagels that I wanted. I tried making really dry doughs, really wet doughs. Then I discovered, okay, the guys that tell me to make the dough more like Play-Doh know what they're talking about, because that's getting me the chew that I want on the inside. So really, and even in the water, people were just like, put malt in the water, put honey in the water, put salt in the water. And it was literally like trial after trial after trial. I guess I'm a bit of a nerd that way. I like playing around with all those levers. So then I know exactly all the different things, what they do, how that changes the texture, what do I like, what I don't like, how much yeast, how much time. And even after making them for, I remember like a few years, they kept coming out ugly. They looked really, really ugly. And I remember I had to call Bagel. I started calling, I had a contact at Murray's Bagels in Manhattan, and they're one of the better bagel shops in Manhattan. So Murray was actually the dad of the guys that own Murray's, and my father and my brother both worked in the textile business, which is called the schmata business, the rag business in New York, and Murray was in the rag trade. So my brother knew Murray and put me in touch with his sons who opened that bagel business and named it after their dad. So I used to ask them, I'm like, why are my bagels so ugly? What can I do? And so they would start giving me tips, which they did for years until I opened my first bagel pop-up, and then they stopped talking to me. The minute I was in the business, that was it. It was all, as a journalist, they're happy to talk to you. You can promote their business. After that, they're just like, then it's a trade thing. They don't care that you're on the other side of the world. They just stop talking to you.
I mean,
does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. But when you tell the story, it sounds, you tried this and went on to the next idea. Was it heartbreaking at times for you? Did you ever want to give up? Was it like, I can't do this anymore? Or was it just, from positive to positive and you kept going forward?
No, it wasn't positive at all. I mean, look, when I was doing it for myself, it didn't matter. And even if I spent the whole weekend trying to make bagels, I remember one time I went up to Orange with friends, and I spent the whole weekend making bagels where I really should have been out, relaxing and going hiking and going to wineries. But I decided to do that, and it takes a lot of time. But once I started the business, once you have to start producing for, for customers and have to start doing that on a regular basis, and you start scaling up, it's an incredibly hard thing to do. I mean, a bakery is a 24/7 business. It is and people are like, oh, you must be up, early in the morning to start baking the bagels. And I'm like, we start at nighttime. It's a middle of the night thing. And now at this point, at any time of the day, something is happening with the business, and something can break down at any point. So you never get to sleep comfortably knowing that everything is fine, because if things might happen, the van may break down at 3 a.m. If you're actually one of my drivers called in sick on Friday night, so I was literally about to go to bed at 10:30. I actually had to go to bed at 11, wake up at 2 a.m., run to the bakery and drive because my driver didn't show up. Wow. It's very, very hard. It's physically demanding. And it's 7 days, and you can't really close because I think we close 3 days a year. So yeah, it's exhausting. It's physically hard, mentally hard. And if anyone has a newborn baby, I can totally relate to the sleep deprivation.
Should we talk through a few of the steps of the bagel? I think people might be interested to know just the steps from start to finish.
Sure.
And also, and I think after that, can you sort of also talk about the difference? Someone asked the difference between a New York bagel and a Montreal bagel, but it'd also be good to hear what actually is the difference between an Australian bagel and a New York bagel from all those perspectives.
The Australian bagel really is more based on a mass manufactured bagel. A mass manufactured bagel is a bagel that's it's done on a machine. It goes on a tray, and you let it prove up quickly, often on the floor, maybe a couple of hours, and then you put it into what's called a rack oven, which is something that just rotates and steams. You basically push a button, you walk away. It gives it a huge whack of steam, which kind of creates that sort of kind of that bagel-ish crust, and you walk away. And it's understandable why you'd want to do that. It's a very fast, easy way to make a bagel, much cheaper way to make a bagel. The thing about the steam only hits the outside of the bagel. It doesn't penetrate to the inside. So you're not changing the texture. You're not creating any of that chew. You're just getting a bready inside. It's like a soft bready inside. It's kind of like I would say it's kind of like the tip-top version of a bagel. And the outside you don't really get much of that crust either. It does a little bit, but you're really not changing that texture much. You just basically, you've taken bread, you put it in that bagel shape, and you've sold that as a bagel. The way you traditionally make a bagel is you're boiling the bagel. And what happens is it's a lot more labor. You're taking the bagels, first of all, you're making and shipping your bagels. You then have to put them into a cold proving process, which is a next day process. You're basically slowing down yeast by putting it into a crew room. And when the yeast slows down, you're allowing other things in the bread to create. You're creating more activity, and basically you're creating natural flavor in that dough. And that takes quite a long time to do that. You can't rush that. You can't do that in a couple of hours. Those things, by the way, that also breaks down the gluten strands in your bread, which is also why sourdoughs and properly made bagels are much better on your digestive system than something that's any bread that's made quickly, because you haven't, that gluten structure is intact, and so when you've got a sourdough or a bagel that's made over 2 days, it's actually broken down for you to digest. Anyway, so then the next day you're taking it out and you put it into the boil, which means you're standing over a very hot boiling kettle. You're going to be dripping in sweat. There's going to be water everywhere. There's also a lot of polenta, because you put the bagels on polenta to keep them from sticking to the tray. It also changes the texture of the water a bit as well. And you've got to fish it out, seed it, then put it in the oven. And it doesn't sound like a big deal, but there's a big difference between pushing a button in an oven, walking away, and again standing over that boiling kettle with hot boiling water. You're just like, it's a lot less comfortable way to be in a bakery. And other bakeries don't want to do it because it makes a mess in their bakery. There's a lot of water all over the floor, on your benches and all that, and again, it takes a lot more time. So that's the main difference between it. And then again, there's also how you make the dough. The hand rolling is also a nice thing, although we do some hand rolling, we do some machine rolling. It all depends, but the biggest difference is that long cold proving process and the boiling. Those are the biggest things. And we still make them in a deck oven, which is a different way to make a bagel. It's just the way you've got a stone deck, and the heat is very different from a rack oven.
Interesting. Let's just show a few photos of
Sure.
the process here.
Yeah, and these are photos from our cooking classes. So we do the cooking classes through the North Sydney Community Center, and we've done some at our bakery as well. So we show people exactly how we make our bagels. It's people are like, are you afraid of showing people that they'll go on a competition with you? And I'm like, they can go and make a bagel. Usually when we show people, they'll go home and they'll do it once, and then they're like, that was fun. This is actually our pumpkin bagel, which we just take 100% roasted pumpkin and put the whole pumpkin in, and it actually bashes it naturally through the dough and creates all that color. And again, this is where we're doing the bagel rolling. So you're rolling it into a log shape, and then you're going to roll this around your hand and then join both sides of the log, which is actually a fairly tricky thing to do to get that shape consistent. You're often, when you first start off, you're often flattening the overlap really flat, so you get a really oblong shaped bagel. So it takes even if I go back in the bakery, it takes me about 2 weeks to get back in where I can get them to that kind of beautiful round consistent shape. And yeah, this is the boiling. So this is this is basically how we used to do them in this size pot. Now it's in a much bigger boiling vat that we have in the bakery. And the boiling actually doesn't take a lot of time, but it makes such a big difference. And then you have to take them out, seed them. These are our everything seeds. And you can see there's a lot of water on that bench, and then you bake them afterwards. Yeah, if you see to the right, there's a lot of mess there. And then you bake them afterwards and take them out. And so there's quite a lot of time and labor. And that's our everything bagel, which is definitely by far our most popular bagel. And it's a mostly traditional bagel, except that you'll see there's caraway seeds on there. In New York, traditionally, actually, there's salt flakes on there instead of caraway. Yeah, there's garlic on there. So yeah, that's poppy, sesame, garlic, onion, and caraway. Yeah. But there's so much salt already in actually any bread dough is basically, you can call bread a salt vehicle. So I was just like, it doesn't really need all that extra whack of salt. And I thought the caraway gave it a little bit a nice sort of, herbaceousness to it. And again, that's just a plain bagel, but you can see all that fermentation, all those little bubbles are on that are actually the fermentation of you can only get that with a long fermentation process. You'll never see that in a quickly made steamed bagel.
Michael, my earliest memory of you were down in Rose Bay in the car park.
Yes.
In the toilet block down there. Was that one of your first shops? I remember we used to run down to get your sultana, your raisin bagel.
So was that the Rose Bay Markets? Where was that?
No, that was on the wharf by the ferry in Rose Bay.
Oh, over there. Yeah, we did that pop-up.
Was that one of your first places?
No, that was part of our long string of pop-ups that we did. I mean, the first one that we did, we took over a bar called Darley Laundromatic in Darlinghurst. And they were a bar that they were closed on Sundays. And I always thought, I was like, that's a really funky bar. It'd be really cool to do a bagel pop-up there. And literally, I just asked them. I'm like, what would you guys think about doing this bagel pop-up? That's that one, yes. So, and they were like, yeah, that sounds cool. You know what? Just come do it. We'll just give it to you for free. And I was like, really? For free? I'm like, okay. And then for the bagel baking, actually, someone recommended I go down to this kitchen run by the Chabad in Bondi, which I didn't even know about, called Our Big Kitchen. And they had a full commercial kitchen there. And same thing, they were just excited about it. They're like, you know what, just get started. We'll just let you use it for free till you get on your feet. You can afford to pay. And the rabbi's from Brooklyn, so he was very excited about having bagels in the bakery. His wife was less excited because she was trying to control his weight. And so we did. So that's how we started. We started, I started learning all the commercial equipment at Our Big Kitchen in Bondi. Did that pop up, put it up on social media. And I didn't know who's going to care, because that was before the big American boom, before all the burger places and everything opened up in Sydney. So American food wasn't really a big thing. And so when I did the pop up, and then all those people came up, and we had queues around 2 full blocks of Darlinghurst. All of a sudden it hit me that, like, oh my God, someone else cares about a real New York bagel than me. And we, but it was funny. People were giving me a hard time about the price of the bagels, because at that point we charged $4 a bagel. And just because it took so much time to make the bagels, and when you make small scale, it costs a lot to make. Ironically, we actually brought our prices down, and then we just raised our prices again. So my bagels now are back to being $4 after 7 years. And I get less flack, but still, you still get somebody every now and again that's just like, why does this cost so much?
Naomi has just commented here, I have a much greater appreciation of the work involved, and the next time I bite into a Brooklyn bagel.
Yeah, absolutely. So is the Montreal bagel, is the Montreal bagel like a Australian bagel? Or is it more like a New York?
No, Montreal bagel is also a beautiful thing. It is quite different, but it comes from the same Polish Jewish roots. And like, I think all bagels originally were all done in a wood fire oven. And so Montreal keeps up that type of bagel. And look, I think that's, but they just evolved a bit different. I think the honey water was probably their thing that they did in Montreal. They put honey in the water. Oh, I mean, people have put different things in the water. They put molasses in the water. The people that put sugar in the water, malt in the water. It's all about creating some caramelization on the outside. The honey does give it a slightly different flavor. It is. They do make it quicker than a New York bagel. A New York bagel has a longer fermentation process. But that Montreal bagel, when it comes out of the oven, actually is a beautiful thing. The problem with the Montreal bagel for me is that once it's sort of like a Napolitana pizza. I don't know if you've had a Napolitana pizza when you get it for like an hour later, it's really not a nice thing. It's only nice out of the oven. A Montreal bagel is sort of that thing. It's a beautiful thing straight out of the oven. If you're gonna transport or have it later, not so much. I don't like the experience later. I mean, both bagels even a New York bagel is a beautiful thing too. Even out of a deck oven, it's amazing. They're just different. One's got a little bit of that kind of, you'll get those little burnt bits of char on the outside of the Montreal bagel. The New York bagel is just different. It's got a different kind of oven feel. New York bagel is definitely a bit more chewy. The Montreal bagel is a bit more fluffy. So they're just different. So I'm just like, I make a New York bagel. They're both really nice. But if you give me either one an hour later, the New York bagel, I think, wins hands down an hour later for sure. So if you're going to take it home,
go to New York.
Yeah, go to New York. If you want to go to the bakery, they're both great.
Okay, can I just show one more photo of you? I love this photo. I think this is one of the most amazing photos. It was taken for a competition they run in Australia every year through Good Food called Shoot the Chef, and I think this should have won. And I'm very disappointed that it didn't win. But I will show you all this photo. It is phenomenal. How's that? Can you tell us about that? Wow.
Yeah, so I wanted to do Shoot the Chef. I always loved the whole competition, and I was never a chef, so I was never able to be in the competition. And then when I started Brooklyn Bagels, I was like, oh, I really want to do something. And we had a couple ideas. You know, one was actually that, you know, I could actually we could do like some kind of, you know, weird nude of me being in a jacuzzi with bagels. So we like it was a boiling process. But then I had this other idea. You know, we had, you know, the Poppy and Sesame. There's an old Star Trek episode where you have these guys that have their faces that are black and white. And I was like, what if we kind of do that thing where my face is half Poppy and half Sesame, that black and white look, and we kind of match it with an everything bagel. And then I think the photographer had the idea of making a mustache out of cream cheese. And this was really hard. We actually had to latex my face for like 2 hours. And then apply the seeds, and they were getting into my ears and my nose and everything else. And, you know, but that was about 2 hours of makeup work, and then we did the shoot, and it really, you know, and even you see my eye, we had to do black makeup on the dark side of my eye. So, but yeah, I had to stay still for 2 hours. It was a very uncomfortable thing, but the results were, you know, were so cool, and we loved the shot. Yeah, and I really thought we had a shot at winning.
Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Great shot.
Yeah, although I think it frightens children.
It's really great. I love it.
We have a couple of questions here. Sandra wants to know, if you're having it later, a bagel, how would you refresh it or reheat it?
Yeah, so there's two ways. I mean, look, I think the nicest way is if you get your oven up to about 200 degrees, and you put the bagels in there, and you give it about, I don't know, it depends, you know, 8 to 10 minutes. That'll actually create the bagels like they would be almost, you get that oven experience where you're going to get a crust on the outside. And then when you cut open that bagel, when you're going to hear that crust being cut through, and the inside actually going to be really steamy and really, it's like this, you get this kind of doughy chewness. It's a beautiful thing. And that's actually that's how I love a bagel. And that's when I first started doing the pop-ups, I was a bit of a bagel Nazi. Because if you go to the really traditional bagel places in New York, they don't toast for you. They're like, the bagels are fresh, they're hot. They're like, you don't need to toast it. And that's that kind of experience. Or you can just whack them straight in the toaster. You know, again, a lot of people like that you know, that extra crunch in the middle by having the tops of the bagels toasted, which is fine too. And that's easy. You can actually keep all your bagels, slice them in half, put them all in a freezer bag, keep it in your freezer, and you can do that whenever you want. You can keep bagels for 2 months that way, and just put them right in the toaster. You don't have to even defrost them; just straight in the toaster and toast them up. They're beautiful that way.
What are your schmees that you do in the markets? You know, I see you in the markets when we're market times.
Yeah. So right now we're trying to bring more out now as we're able to get a little bit more scale up. So like we do a plain whipped cream cheese. So I like a cream cheese that's a little bit softer than Philly. So we've got one that we make that we whip up that's got a bit more softness to it. I've got a garlic chive and you know and spring onion cream cheese. You have Sky and cream cheese in New York. That's just you know green onion. I like that garlic whack that goes with it. I think that actually gives it a really nice extra flavor. We do a jalapeno cream cheese that's made out of just literally just fresh jalapeno, but it's I love that one because I like a bit of spice, but you don't get any spice until after the milk solids of the cream cheese disappear, and then you get that jalapeno kick afterwards, kind of like a Mexican chocolate, chili chocolate kind of thing. And then I've got a lox cream cheese. I mean, lox is what we call, you know, smoked salmon in New York. That's what they called it in Eastern Europe. It's actually a Scandinavian word for smoked salmon. And then that's got smoked salmon, capers, red onion, dill, and that really is that's a classic combination that you would get in bagel places. That's really, if you want a loaded up bagel in New York, that's what you're gonna get. Again, that's separate, but it's we just put it into cream cheese. So all you gotta do is just put together, no prep work needed. And then we play around. Right now, I've got a strawberry cream cheese that I'm doing seasonally, and we'll start playing around now, especially once we're going to open a cafe in our bakery to replace the drive-through eventually. Once I do that, we'll start playing around more. We'll have staff that can actually start doing more creative flavors, maybe seasonal fruits, maybe we used to do a honey walnut in the original pop-ups. That was always a nice combination. We used to do a bacon, bourbon, and maple cream cheese that I would make a bacon jam that would take a couple hours to make, and then we'd put that through. It is a brilliant thing. Unfortunately, we're looking at maybe making the bakery kosher, so it doesn't really align with the kosher bakery. So I might have to make that at a fun, maybe we'll do a pop-up every now and again and just do that for fun, because it is a beautiful, beautiful cream cheese. It's also incredibly expensive to make, and it's just it's a hard thing to work into our current bakery processes.
Yeah. I did see a jar of Nutella in your video. Do you ever do your Nutella?
Yeah, I've done a Nutella cream cheese. I've just done straight Nutella. I think when we had we just had our pop around cafe in Circular Quay that we had all of last year until they demolished that part of the building. And so I think we're doing like Nutella and banana, and I think we even had like puffed corn on it, and we were playing around with different combinations, and that was actually really nice. And then with Vegemite, I refused to put Vegemite on my bagels for almost the whole existence of Brooklyn Bagels, because I'm like, look, we're a New York American bakery. Americans, I would say 98% of Americans hate Vegemite. So I didn't do it, but then literally when in Circular Quay, I had one customer that literally lost his shit, and he basically like started cursing at us for not having Vegemite, and I was like, you know what, we'll just give people what they want. We'll have it as an option. Doesn't hurt anybody, so yeah, so we're letting a little bit of Australian culture come in, and again, I'm not as strict as I was about what I won't do than I was 7 years ago. I wouldn't make blueberry bagels because they're in New York. They're known as the Midwest abomination. I wouldn't toast. I wouldn't use Vegemite. I wouldn't do a rainbow bagel for ages either, because I was just like, I'm not huge into food coloring. But then we did it for Mardi Gras one year, and people loved it. And I was like, well, you know what? It's like, I think at the essence of what we want to do, we like to make people happy, and kids loved it. It was fun for events and parties. So eventually we gave in. We're like, okay, we're gonna do one bagel that's not this beautiful. It's not gonna be natural beautiful. It's just gonna be fun. Like that's okay. Doing something for fun is okay as well.
Michael, you mentioned your Circular Quay, the development closed down.
Yes.
And then, it's amazing how things do happen and how things evolve. So I read recently that you were taking a lease in, I'll let you have a bite of your bagel and make us all your...
Yeah, I don't think you can see that. Yeah, so I do have, they brought me breakfast. I don't know if there you guys go. That's, so that's there you go. I'm having everything bagel with plain cream cheese. I'm more of a purist. I just like plain cream cheese on a nice bagel. That's, I don't need any accoutrements. I'm good with that.
So it is all in the timing. And so when your store closed in Circular Quay, I read that you were taking a lease down in Bondi just before we went into isolation. Is that correct? And something happened with that deal?
No, so it's funny in this business. You've had a lot of, there's been a lot of backward, one step or two steps back, two steps forward, one step backwards.
Yeah.
So we took a lease on Bondi, I was doing that with a partner, and while we put the money down on the site, and while we were trying to get our corporation going, the landlord found a better deal, and took that deal and gave us back our deposit. And we were like, can you do that? You know, it's like, I thought that what's the point of putting a deposit down? But yeah, that's what happened. So we're still looking for another site, but then look, the bakery's in Marrickville, and during COVID, I just decided, I mean, I've been in Marrickville for 4 years, but never opened up anything here at the bakery, even though I thought about it for the whole time over 4 years, but I'm in a really, in a hardcore industrial spot where there's no walk by really. There's some drive by, but it's mostly people going from Marrickville to IKEA. And then during COVID, I was like, you know what, let's just try to create things that will keep our bakers employed, because that was really our main goal during COVID. And so so I did a couple of things, but one of the things I did is I just launched this drive-through at the bakery here, and just literally got a coffee cart for the little Marionette coffee and brought the bagels out and sold the cream cheeses in tubs just to take away. And literally it just went ballistic. It was like being back in Darlinghurst in the original days when we had the pop-up. We had queues around 2 blocks of Marrickville. And that's been very, very, very popular. And it's basically shown us that the locals love us, and we love being here, and people love coming to the bakery. And it's a warehouse, and we've got, like, you know, some graffiti on the wall, and it feels more Brooklyn than probably anywhere else we could be. So that's our next project, is really getting this done properly and opening up a proper cafe here, and it'll be sort of our creative hub.
Amazing. And where, other than Marrickville, can you tell everyone, they want to know, where can they buy them? How can they get their hands on your bagels if they don't want to go to Marrickville?
Well, so one of the things that came out of COVID as well is, well, we do lots of farmers markets already, which has been a big part of our business. So we're at the Marrickville farmers markets every Sunday. We're all over the place. We're at Warrywood on Fridays in Northern Beaches. I have guys that sell our bagels at Manly when Manly gets back to full speed there. We were doing Bondi during COVID, but they had other bagel guys that were in there, so they hid during COVID, and we were in Bondi the whole time. But they just let them back. So last Saturday was our last Saturday there. But we're talking to them about maybe Sunday, when Sunday comes back on board. And then there's Orange Grove and Leichhardt on Saturdays. We'll probably do more markets as we keep growing. And then there's some grocers like Maloney's Grocer in Surrey Hills, and David Jones Food Hall on Elizabeth Street and in Bondi. They have our bagels. And the biggest news for us is that there's the new Coles Local that just opened in Rose Bay, which is just sort of the new high-end fancy Coles that just opened up.
Flagship.
Their flagship. So they've got our bagels in there. It's funny, they haven't branded it really as Brooklyn Boy Bagels. So we're working on actually our first packaged product, which will launch probably I think it's on the 22nd of June. So our bagels will be in there. So that's our first sort of big supermarket play. And what's funny, since that's happened, other grocers have contacted us about carrying our bagels. So it's possible we may start, find that our bagels are going to be in a lot more supermarkets soon. Wow. Yeah, which is a funny balance, because we're not, I never saw ourselves as a supermarket brand, but I guess it's kind of like Sonoma. We're sort of at that level of quality, and so as long as they allow us to do that as a price point, we can maintain the quality. That we're happy to do that, and probably at scale, we'll probably be able to bring the pricing down once we start doing bagels at that kind of scale. So that it's an interesting thing for us. It's a really, really, really different. It's a big step up for the business at this point.
Fabulous. I'm just reminding everyone, we've only got a couple of minutes left. If you'd like to ask Michael a question, you can type it into the Q&A, which is at the bottom of your screen, or in the chat room. We have a couple more minutes to pop up with the questions. It's been an absolutely fascinating morning, Michael, with you. Your stories are truly inspiring. I wanted to just quickly mention, while we're waiting for people and their questions to come through, what's coming up next on our food channel on the Dunera project. We have, I'm doing a pickled cucumber workshop on Monday, so join us for that. Lisa is baking babka with Bette Midler on Thursday morning at 11. The following week, Lisa's doing a butterscotch pudding, and I, the following week, am doing a virtual food tour through our Vietnamese community in Cabramatta. So go on to dunera.org.au and check out all of the wonderful live performances and a wonderful platform where you'll get some great entertainment.
I may have to go to the pickle one. I've always wanted to make New York pickles. It's one of the things that we've always wanted to do.
There you go,
Yeah.
Monday at 11.
I've been perfecting that over the years.
Have you? Are you using a fermented pickle or just a quick pickle?
No, quick pickle.
Quick pickle. I know. I like to do things the hard way. Also, I forgot to mention, we during COVID, we also launched a home delivery service. So we actually have got a new website called brooklynboybagels.com.au. So we do deliver to different areas on different days of the week. And I forgot to mention, here in Marrickville at the bakery at 19 Carrington Road, I've got the drive-through is here that's set up right now. So from Tuesday to Sunday, from 7 a.m. to noon during the week and 1 a.m. on the weekends, you can actually just drive up or cycle up. We're on the cycle right here, or walk up. And I've got bagels and coffee here, every day, except Monday. Monday's the one day that we try to relax.
And you've got challah, and you've got chocolate babka, and have you got bialys as well? Somebody's asked. We
played around bialys for a bit. It is one of those things that's high on my to-do list that I really want to perfect. I've had my guys do it, but I haven't liked the results. So I really want to go back and actually, I need more time just to go and again be that anal person in the bakery that tries all the levers until I get the result I want. I would love to do bialys. I don't know if I'd sell a lot of bialys, but bialys are the other Jewish Polish bread, right? There are bagels, which are like these international superstars. The bialys come from Bialystok, Poland, which is why they're called bialys. And if you go to New York to the really, really old school bakeries, they make both. And I don't know if you all know what a bialy is, but it's instead of a boiled bread, it's a baked bread, and it's got an indentation in it. And traditionally it would have like caramelized onion and poppy in the middle, but it's got kind of this nice kind of, fish on the bottom's got a bit of a crunch, but it's kind of airier in the inside, not as dense as the bagel. Also a beautiful thing, really beautiful thing, and I think it's in some way that's more legit New York, because it's like you'll see it pop around a few places in the U.S., but it's very, very rare to see it outside of New York.
Yeah. Okay. Well, hopefully we'll see them here. I mean, it sounds like your choice of product is just getting wider and wider all the time.
Well, we try to rein it in every now and again. Especially, we bake we also wholesale to cafes, so we actually, because that we have to make New York rye, we make challah. I think we make the best commercially produced challah in definitely in Sydney. I don't know about Melbourne. I think you only get a bit of challah if you make it at home. And our New York rye, it's a light rye, but made with organic rye flour and has caraway in it. And I think those two breads are also beautiful things. And people ask me what my favorite bagel is, and I'm like, to be honest, my favorite thing is the challah. I'll if you put that bread with me in the car, I'll probably eat half of it before I get home and regret it.
Yeah, we've all done that. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to tell everyone they can reach you on Instagram, which is Brooklyn Boy Bagels. The website, as Michael said, brooklynboybagels.com.au. Home delivery, coming to the east, Coles, North Rose Bay. It's actually amazing. We feel like you're nearly here, and I think everybody out there is very excited. Any thoughts of going to Melbourne, or that's too hard?
I mean, there's lots of places we'd like to go after this. It's first I think we want to get Sydney down, pretty well. Like at some point I would love to get down to Melbourne. It's probably better bagel weather. You probably don't worry about your bagel body as much in Melbourne either. So it would be good. It would be good.
That's
so you never know.
Conversation, yeah.
Yes.
All right. So just thank you, Michael, for giving up your time. We really, really appreciate it, and I've absolutely loved talking to you, as I'm sure Melissa has. And I hope that you all enjoyed hearing his story. It's amazing. Honestly, we could keep talking again for another 2 hours. But next time we all need to have bagels, I think, to eat when we talk to you, because I'm really starving now.
All right, we're going to have a virtual schmear next time.
Okay, promise?
Okay, done.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for joining us this morning, for tuning in. We really appreciate your support.
Yeah. And we'll see you Monday for the pickle workshop at 11. Bye, all. Thank you
All
so
right,
much,
guys. I'll see you all then.
Bye,
everybody.
guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Bye.